The National Defense Authorization Act. That's what you're hearing. NDAA, not like an NDA. This is the big. This is the thing that they're going back and forth in this debate today, because they have the National Defense Authorization. It's coming up. They have to get some bipartisan support to pass this for fiscal 2024, and it's been described as I'm kind of aggravated because the way that the media is writing about this is they're trying to attach a culture war aspect to it, but as a pejorative against Republicans, because it's an $886 billion defense policy bill, but yet Democrats are insisting that things like abortion, like taxpayer-funded abortion on demand as birth control for military, unnecessary, quote-unquote, gender-affirming surgeries for troops who say that they're transgendered, DEI chiefs and all this stuff, that's all part of it. Democrats have demanded that all of those things be included as part of it. And so that is what has been the holdup in what previously has always been a pretty easy bipartisan vote of support, right? But when you add all this stuff in there, I mean, you can't seriously expect people to fund things like, I don't know, like paying for abortions as birth control for troops, or to pay for surgeries for troops who, like a dude who wants to identify as a woman and wants to have, his Frankenween changed. I don't know how else you want to just feel real. What does that have to do with the National Defense Authorization Act? I mean, it's rhetorical because the answer is that it doesn't. So they get to decide today what amendments are going to make it to the floor. So they have, one of the things that's already in there is the elimination of a chief diversity officer. That language is apparently already in it, but what they're going for is the elimination of any and all DEI funding. The diversity, what is it? Equity. That's what it is. I can't even remember the stupid alphabet garbage anymore. My brain is just like jettisoning all of it out. They want to prohibit any kind of additional DEI funding, right? They want to cut funding for the gender transition, which you're not changing your gender, you're chopping up your bits. Surgeries. They also want to include a block so that taxpayers are prevented from paying for soldiers seeking abortions and covering their travel expenses. And they also want to stop the incessant renaming of all the bases. So that's it. And so the press is accusing the right of pushing a culture war when it was the left that fought to include all of this BS in, which was into what was previously a completely innocuous bipartisan bill. So whose problem is it? That's what's so frustrating about this. Like, let's talk. I mean, we've been having conversations about woke military, have we not? We've been having conversations about woke military. And whether or not that is eroding any kind of advantage that we have over any kind of enemies. It's a real thing. So I don't know I can't see Democrats willing to gamble, all of them anyway, on, we couldn't have this funded because we wanted to make sure that we had gender transition surgeries for these, soldiers that identify as trans. But, what do I know? Maybe they will. The left has gotten kookier and kookier. And the propositions that the GOP have come out, they've already been slammed by the White House. The White House says it's, they've taken issue with the anti-wokery. They said, it's going to end funding for critical race theory programs. Yeah, that's kind of what it's, yeah, and they've been defending the Defense Department's diverquity. You know what? I want to keep that, diverquity, because it includes the diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's what happens when I try to say those three words all at once, diverquity. We're saying it. I love it. So from now on, let it be known, it's not diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's diverquity. So the Defense Department's diverquity programs, they've criticized Republicans' attempt to eliminate all of that. They got really mad because some of the amendments that Biden hates are the amendments that ban drag shows in the military. Like, I'm not talking about the Bob Hope kind of stuff. I'm talking about the gyrating, let's shake your bits into people's faces, treating it like a strip club kind of stuff. The ban on federal funds for the critical race theories, et cetera, et cetera. The chief diversity officer thing that already, I read one report where that's what they're pushing for, but then I've read another report where that language was already agreed to and included. So I don't know. Maybe that they thought that was the least that they could do. I don't know. But their defense has been, we rely on diverse perspectives, though. What does that have to do with taxpayers having to fund for somebody's abortion on demand as birth control? That's kind of what we're looking at also. What does that have to do? I mean, it doesn't. It's, the whole thing. Can you imagine? What if we had another World War III? How in the hell would we be able to prosecute a war when we're dealing with all of this stuff in the military? I mean, they actually would hold stuff up because drag shows for kids and because of the gender surgeries. It's one thing to rely on the strengths of different groups and utilize that for the benefit of the whole, which in this case would be the fighting force. But that's not what this is. This is social experimentation at the expense of military readiness. That's exactly what this is. I mean, you kick ass and you break stuff. That's your job. What does this have to do with any of it? You're going to get... I go back to that Mark Milley thing when he was talking about reading about white rage. It's like, how does that prepare you to go and fight? How does that prepare you in dealing with China? How does that prepare you in dealing with, any kind of threats? What does that do? Good grief. I mean, this is, it's weakening it. It's weakening. Getting lectured about DEI, that has nothing to do with American security. Nothing. So all of that, as I said, they are debating these amendments to see what's going to make it to the floor and what doesn't. So that's the National Defense Authorization Act and the House Rules Committee. And this is going to go through a process. They're going to decide today, like I said, what amendments make it to the floor with this thing and what doesn't, and then they'll go from there. So it's going to be a little bit before, you have that determined.